carry on our conversation on incomes, inflation, growth, and jobs. With us now for more is John Paulo Rivera, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. So good to see you again, JP. Welcome back to the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me again.
Yeah, so what do you make of what JC said there? A lot of focus, dogged focus on becoming upper middle income status. Are we looking at the wrong metric here?
Well, I totally agree with Dr. Punong Bayan's assessment of the achievement of the UMIC, but then I would like to take it from a governance perspective so that we can totally achieve that UMIC regardless within the year or in the short term. So the thing
is there a lack of governance?
What I mean is we have to look at this from a different perspective. We have to find ways of doing new things, no? Making improvements that's different from what we're currently doing so that we can expect something new from the behavior of the economy. Rather than insisting on this policy and that, maybe it's time to recalibrate because the report on the UMIC is actually a rallying call for structural reform so that eventually we can catch up and totally and finally achieve that UMIC status.
Well, to be fair, the government's already revised its growth forecast range for the year. So they've come down to what people think might be a more realistic 5.5% to 6.5%. Would that be a good start?
That can be a good start. And the reality now here is we have to be very deliberate with the programs, with the policies, so that the value added, the multiplier effects of government project, government spending, even investment spending, even consumption can truly materialize, boosting this economic growth to $1 trillion, right? That is still the shortfall that we have to achieve that upper middle income status. And with the power of the multiplier effect, then we can eventually close in that gap.
Benign inflation could have been a no-brainer, but when you check at the wet markets, as we did last Friday when inflation figures came out for June, people are still complaining they can't buy more for less. Even as inflation's remained at lows that we hadn't seen since November 2019. So where is the disconnect there? Why are people still complaining when we just remind them, recall June of 2024, inflation was at 3.7%, way double than what we have right now.
Well, that's the thing about inflation, because even if inflation is slowing down, we are not actually experiencing deflation, which means that prices remain to be high, but their rate of increase is actually slowing down. In short, prices are still expensive, but then the rate at which it is increasing is actually slowing down.
But is that a fair point to make, though, when you think about the cumulative inflation that we've experienced during the pandemic, then we're trying to work that off.
Yeah.
Are we then not working it off fast enough?
Well, we're trying to manage inflation so that it will not spike up significantly, putting more pressure on consumer purchasing power. What we're currently doing now is trying to manage so that it does not add further burden to our consumers by managing it to a rate at which our consumers could still manage, and that the rate at which income is also increasing is being matched by this increase in inflation.
So we're getting to interest rates now. Is it more monetary policy maneuvering here or price checks? I mean, where's the low-hanging fruit to get that inflation at a level that people might want to spend more and can spend more for less?
Well, our monetary authority, even our fiscal sector, have been working together to be able to achieve that balance so that the economy can still grow, inflation is managed, and that consumers would still be able to afford things. However, the downside risk or the headwinds, particularly in the international market, continue to threaten this economic management.
Could it? I mean, Vietnam, could it be a big threat? I mean, right now they've come right down to 20%, according to Trump, and that's like a 3% gap we have there. If indeed we end up at 17%, would that be a place that we could say that we are less competitive?
Well, the gap may be material, but then it boils down to the way transactions are held, ease of doing business, ease of doing trade between the Philippines and Vietnam would actually matter given this differential in tariff rates.
All right, so that's internal, external risks, and we've come right down to what you said at the start of this chat, governance. Where's the low-hanging fruit? Where do we start with governance and trying to do things differently in the last 3 years of the administration?
Well, the literature is very clear that political risk actually generate economic risk. That's why there might be a need for us to be able to manage political noise by diverting attention, resources on economic affairs that would truly matter and create value for the economy.
How's that? How do we do that? And who actually does it?
Well, I mean, every one of us, the Filipino people, government, private sector, it is a whole of economy approach that we have to project an image of the Philippines that it is investment worthy, money is worth investing here in the Philippines, and that there is policy continuity. So that I know that as an investor, putting in money in the Philippines would be value adding, it would be productive, and therefore we can generate expenditures, we can generate income that will allow the economy to grow towards upper middle income.
Well, not when you think about what JC said there, the fears of any investor coming in, doing business, ease of doing business for one, taxes are high, high power costs. You know, these are issues that have to be addressed, and they're not new issues. They've been there for the longest time.
True. That's why it's very timely to address them by reducing these political instabilities, reducing political noise, reducing issues that actually hamper us from actually focusing on issues that truly matter.
So what then is the role of the economic managers? I mean, there has been a cabinet reshuffle, a revamp. All the economic managers have been retained. What can they do at this point to actively contribute to what you're saying of a change in governance in order to push things forward?
Well, for the economic managers, they can actually reinforce the structural reforms. The Philippines has been making significant strides in relaxing constitutional constraints that would allow more investments or liberalize investment environment in the Philippines. We've been doing that, no? We have started that, but the implementation would have to be strengthened, particularly in the ease of doing business, particularly in infrastructure spending that will allow mobility, ease of mobility in and out of the country, allowing investors to have comfort in actually being in the Philippines.
We have about a minute to go, and the State of the Nation address comes to us at the end of this month. What would you like to hear from the President?
Well, personally, I would like to hear emphasis on enabling those reforms happen in the next 3 years. I understand that 3 years would not be enough for those structural reforms, but it is very important that they get started now.
And hopefully it's not too late. We got 3 years to go.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks for that. JP Rivera of PIDS.